Hey guys, Nick here, and today we are into part 10 of What If Eastman Survived. Now, in the last episode, we got into Eastman, Rick, and all the group going towards Hilltop to get Maggie treated for her pregnancy, and the lineup scene happening in a much different way, but yet it hasn't happened, because Eastman puts his heart and soul so far into trying to plead with Negan to make a deal for all communities to trade equally and for no more conflict, and tells Negan that he means every bit of not wanting to kill his men. And at the end, Negan's even starting to listen to him. And Eastman just keeps going. He senses victory. He knows that this time he can actually save people. He has pretty much saved everyone he's come across. But the saviors at the post and the ones on the road, those, he wasn't there fully to try and plead his case like the best. But here, he senses victory and keeps pushing further, saying that Negan must have had people he cared about. He wouldn't have done this in the past when everything started. Eastman was the same way. That's what changed him, made him this way. He knows that nobody is really gone. Everybody can change. And this is a very reminiscent move to Rick talking to the governor. And in the end, Negan, unlike the governor, is actually listening. He's listened to everything Eastman has to say. But when bringing up his past and everything, like Gabriel did, Negan, albeit reluctantly listening to this, wants nothing more than to Lucille him right now for bringing up his past. But everything Eastman said, Negan believes him. And if it's true, he knows it most likely to be true now. There never had to be conflict, and maybe he has been going about all this wrong ever since he brushes his old past aside, trying not to think about his wife. But Eastman, his words have soothed Negan, made him think differently, remember who he was before. And Eastman about people, Negan was always about that too. But Eastman pushed it further, made Negan believe again. And with all that said, he finally speaks up. He decides to honor Eastman's request, and finally believes him. On one hand, he tells Eastman that on regular occasion of people bringing up his past and stepping up towards him, he would have Lucilled them instantly. But Eastman, Negan's found that he's telling the truth. And Negan knows more than anyone when someone is telling the truth. At least that's what he says. And he decides he will honor the request for all the communities, including the ones he has conquered, to trade equally and work together. On one condition: Alexandria gives the sanctuary 50% of their belongings. He says that this is more than a generous request, considering that men were lost on his end. And Rick at this point is the next to stand up and say that he really does not believe that the saviors deserve 50% of their belongings. But Eastman, as well as many other members in the group, look at Rick as if to say, don't mess with this guy. We just got a deal going. And Rick, only 50% of him, really meant what he said there. But having this deal thrown in front of them when one of them was about to die, Negan's being more than generous here. He even was in the original show. So, with that said, Negan and the Saviors approach Alexandria with everybody else, albeit Maggie and Glenn. They go to Hilltop. And Negan and the Saviors take 50% of their belongings, but are a lot nicer about it because of circumstances and Eastman pouring his heart and soul into Negan. Afterwards, and after it's all said and done, the Saviors return to the sanctuary, and Negan relays the message to all of his men that the communities that they put under their control, the sanctuary is going to be open to all communities now, and they will all trade equally. So business will be kind of the same, except not the same. They're not going to take anymore. They're all going to trade, because Eastman was right. It was wrong of them to assert so much authority onto other people. Negan being much more, like, merciful here, like, realizing what he's done. But Simon's not so ready to get up on that little high horse there, saying that it's kind of a mistake, like, just trusting one man's word and judgment to just turn everything that the Saviors have gone on upside down for one man? He's got him paranoid, thinking about his past. Negan says that it's not just about him. It's trusting Eastman, knowing that nobody meant to kill anybody. They were in the wrong. They attacked first. And Eastman, everything he said to him, made Negan realize that more. Were it not for him, he would have just gone with his original plan, like we know in the original story. But Eastman, it's like the therapist or father that he never had, in a way. And that he's right. They have to do this. Make the Saviors better. Because they're still going to get stuff, it's just not going to be through authority, like they did before. Simon's like, this is still season, like, 7-ish Simon, so he's, like, alright with this idea, because he's not going to really fight at this time against Negan, but he's still not okay with it. Who would be if they were Simon or anybody at the sanctuary? Anyways, Maggie, as well as Glenn, and possibly a few others, go to Hilltop, and nobody was killed here. So people like Maggie and characters like that are going to have much better character development and not hate Negan. Nobody's going to really hate anybody, really, except, you know, Denise still died, so mainly Dwight. But anyways, as I said, all communities that are known now trade equally amongst each other, that of which being the Hilltop, the Kingdom, the Sanctuary, and Alexandria. The Kingdom, soon enough, being figured out upon from saviors and communities alike. Well, Jesus also. And then, eventually, the Scavengers are found out about. They still remain to themselves, because at this time they hadn't made a deal with Negan just yet. They were kind of just by themselves. So, whenever they do get found out about, eventually, by whatever group, it wouldn't really matter. They just keep to themselves, really. And if they did join, like, in trading and being like that with other people, then Jadis would have no reason to get supplies from the CRM. So it really doesn't matter. Tara and Heath still go on their run, and this is after the satellite outpost, so that would go the same. Heath, I feel, he would have probably get traded still by Jadis to the CRM. I'm thinking that it's most likely that it would happen that way, meaning that Tara would be alone and escorted out of Oceanside. Because that would go the same, because she wouldn't know about anything that's happened. Once she returns, even though Denise is not there, she does at least have much better... She's okay with the Saviors and nobody else fighting now, but she's not okay with the fact that Denise is dead. You know? That's still something she's not going to get over. But like I said, Dwight's the real only guy that her or Daryl is really going to hate. And with all this said, she's not going to reveal to Rick or anybody about Oceanside because there's no need to. There's no one to fight. So, if anything, Oceanside's just a back-layered plan for the future, in her mind. Dwight and Sherry, albeit kind of still reluctantly, still stay with Negan. especially after everything that's happened. Looking at Negan turn the Saviors around in a much different way takes Dwight and Sherry some time to get used to, because they were always out for each other. They never liked Negan's way, and we still know that from the end of Fear. But they're okay with the fact that Negan's changed his ways. They're no longer slaves, and Negan's whole wives thing and everything would be turned upside down too. He would change a lot. Morgan, obviously he's still going to be around because Eastman's still around, and anybody who he would then be acquainted to after especially this, like Benjamin and Henry and stuff, they would have not died. Well, Benjamin mainly. Henry didn't die till season 9, and Morgan was already gone by that point. Anyways, Eugene, he begins crafting bullets for all communities alike, meaning that all of them are going to have great stockpiles in the future, like I've mentioned in many of other stories. Now, whenever it comes to Morgan and Eastman's Aikido team, we got a huge roster now. Sam, Eric, Carol, Jesse, Aaron, Owen, Pete, Jesus, Ezekiel, Jerry, Henry, Benjamin, Gabriel. By this point, especially after the Savior War, Eastman's influence would have stretched to other communities alike, meaning that people like Jesus and Ezekiel and Jerry, their combat skills are going to be amped to 11. And I'm going to mention a lot more on that next few parts, because these next few parts here are going to be the last three, the three last little bits to the story, meaning that we're going to wrap up the story probably part 11. Anyways, with Negan, he still remains firm with Lucille and all of the Saviors at his helm, but a much nicer leader. Simon and Gavin are still alive, meaning that the authority of the Saviors is still very good. It's just not pressed onto other communities. But in regards to the Sanctuary, all of control is still maintained there, meaning that the Sanctuary still stays in place. And because of the truck, I have to mention again, that truck that Alexandria has saved everybody. Like, whenever they starved in season 10 and 11, that's going to significantly help them. That truck was a huge loss. And you guys might not think about it, but when you should look back at it and see how much was on that truck. Anyways, Glenn would be alive, as I've done in other stories, to remain a father to Herschel for now, because we don't know what's going to happen to him yet. And even if I've had him live, he's only lived to like season 10 or 11, but we'll see. We'll see in the next part or two here. Anyways, Abraham and Sasha still remained a thing because neither one of them died, and Sasha would have no reason to commit suicide because Abraham's still alive. So they fully get into a full romance this time. Spencer and Rosita, henceforth, get into a relationship themselves. Ezekiel remains his king stature because Shiva and none of his kingdom residents have been slaughtered. So he still remains in that whole king mantra, because there'd be no reason for him to turn back from it. And that's another repeat that I've done throughout all my series. Morales is the next one to mention. Because of Negan's peace offering to everybody and all the communities, Morales is therefore nicer. And soon enough, he goes to Negan for a quick talk. Negan wonders what's up, and Morales says that is Rick the Rick Grimes that he used to know? And Negan says, well, his name's Rick Grimes, go ahead and see them if you want to, or see him. And soon enough, Morales pays a visit to Alexandria and sees 5 people that he knew before. Rick, Carl, Carol, Daryl, and Glenn. All the people that he knew back from the Atlanta camp. And this would be a much nicer meeting this time because, you know, Morales isn't waving a gun in Rick's face and Daryl doesn't have to kill him. And Daryl would be nicer to Morales too because Dwight is the main guy that you would hate here because he killed Denise. Other than that, Negan's like a saint here because of Eastman's stretch. Sadiq would be the next one to be saved by Carl or somebody. It really doesn't matter. And with that said, Carl and Enid themselves get into a relationship, which I've also done before. Whether they would have a kid or not is really up for debate. I've had that happen before, so whether it would or not is just, something that would be nice for the both of them. But a relationship that we really need to touch base on, and that's really important for the story's future, which is going to be summed up in 3 parts, is Eastman and Carol. They get into a relationship in this story after the whole savior battle. It would be some time before that happens, though. Now, you'd think that Tobin or Ezekiel would be one of the 2 that Carol would get into a relationship with, because after really kind of an Axel moment at the prison, these 2 were the only ones she really got, down with, that she wanted a relationship with. But Eastman? Because of everything he's done, everything he's worked towards since he's came to Alexandria, and Carol doubting him for so long, and finally learning Aikido and trusting him, they began to build a bond. And Carol began to understand Eastman far more so than she ever, either cared to or planned to. So eventually, those feelings would start to stir up, and it would build into a relationship. Soon enough, we get into season 9, which would put us a really big time skip like I've done before. Meaning that the bridge, because of literally almost no one dying, would be nothing, even with the storm. Gabriel remains having all of his sight because he wouldn't have that experience with the walkers. Eric would remain alive, so that would help Aaron's character development and not make him a beast. Yet, Gregory, I feel that he would still try to kill Maggie, but with Glenn around, we all know what I've done before with that. Glenn would literally just... And I've had Glenn kill Gregory before, period, even when Maggie dead. So, yeah, Gregory, it's just... no. Anyways, we then get to the 6-year time jump, with everything going more than swimmingly, with Yumiko's group getting rescued by Shiva and several kingdom residents. And with all that, we're slowly but surely getting into the Whisperer arc. And then, whenever Eugene and Rosita, which I've also done before, go to the radio tower to further communications, Abraham, Spencer, and most likely others would be there to stop Eugene from falling, and the entrance in the Whisperers, at least here, would be significantly undermined. And the ones to go to the cemetery, the place where the Whisperers, well, to them, just walkers, were last, are Yumiko, Magna, Michonne, Rick, Daryl, Aaron, Eric, and Jesus. How will the Whisperer saga go with Eastman's influence, meaning ungodly amounts of people surviving? Does this mean that the Whisperers will be little to nothing in terms of a threat? And if they are, who will the Pike victims be? And how will the fight with Beta go in the first act? And that's where we leave things for the moment. Like I said, these last 3 parts, yes, you heard me right, last 3 parts. This wasn't the longest of series, really. It's been a minute since I did kind of a short series. Is really summed up in 3 last parts, since the majority of the series, if not all of it, has been short. But the last 3 parts are going to sum up the rest of the story in about 18 to 20 minutes long. But I hope you guys enjoyed this episode and are enjoying the story so far. Hope you get to see the last little bit of it coming up here soon. I'll see you guys later.